When society looks at someone who spends most of their time alone, the diagnosis is usually pretty quick. We label them as isolated, antisocial, or lacking a solid support system. But if you look past that outward layer of absolute stillness, you find a brain operating at a scale that the external silence doesn't reveal. Alone, these resting state networks are 40% more active than the average baseline. While the world sees a person just sitting quietly in a room, their brain is running a high-volume analytical simulation. This constant internal activity generates a baseline of data that shifts how they process every future interaction. We usually treat overthinking as a symptom of anxiety. But for the solitary mind, dwelling on a single thought for hours is a mechanism for dissecting complex problems before they even arise. When an average person makes a decision, they view it through two lenses. A solitary thinker runs that scenario through 10 distinct angles. They push 5 layers deep, asking, why did this happen? Who benefits? What are the motives and long-term impacts? Most people operate on the surface. Something happens and they react instantly based on immediate instinct. By the time a situation actually unfolds, the solitary thinker has already mapped out the risks and variables. It is difficult to surprise a person who has already lived through a scenario a dozen different ways in their head. That processing power also points outward. Because they speak less, they can dedicate more energy to observing the people around them. They bypass the words you are saying and focus on physical baselines. Within minutes, they nat the micro movements of your eyes, the tension in your hands, and the slightest shift in pitch to identify your actual intentions. This sharp external perception is paired with internal emotional regulation. Spending hundreds of hours alone forces a person to process their own anger, grief, and joy without external feedback. If someone insults a highly socialized person, they often lash out. If they receive praise, their ego inflates. The solitary mind maintains an emotional baseline that doesn't fluctuate based on outside opinions. In any conflict, an angry opponent is predictable. You know what they will do next. But a person who remains calm and emotionally detached gives you no data to work with, making it difficult for an observer to map their next move. This brings us to a psychological trait that is exceptionally rare: the absence of a need for external validation. When someone understands their own intrinsic value, they no longer feel the compulsion to broadcast achievements or display wealth to prove they belong. Since they aren't chasing the social rewards that drive most behavior, they stop following the standard social cues that dictate how most people interact. They operate on internal rules that they alone define. The only way to predict a person's next move is to figure out what they want from you. When an individual truly desires nothing from the outside world, their actions no longer follow a predictable path. It raises a question. Why has society historically been so suspicious of people who are genuinely content sitting in a quiet room by themselves? Most social structures rely on 3 basic tools to keep individuals in line: the threat of losing status, the promise of money, and the exploitation of emotional needs. A person who is entirely self-reliant instantly neutralizes those tools. You cannot threaten to isolate someone who thrives in solitude, and you cannot buy someone who requires nothing to be content. The ancient strategist Chanakya documented this dynamic thousands of years ago. He noted that invincible strength isn't found in a crowd, but is cultivated in isolation. There is a dividing line here. Being lonely means you are seeking company because you are running away from yourself. Being alone means you no longer need company because you have finally found yourself. If you want to test your own cognitive baseline, try a simple experiment today. Spend 30 uninterrupted minutes alone. No phone, no television, no human contact, just you and your own thoughts. The first few days will be uncomfortable, but mastering your own company is the ultimate form of freedom. A mind that requires nothing from others to be at peace is practically untouchable.